I want us to begin from a story that we aired last week, that is on Mangororo Primary School, that shows the situation, how learners have to go through a class that is flooded. They do not have the prerequisite infrastructure in as far as the desks are concerned. Let's have a listen and a look at that story.
At Mangororo Primary School in Jaribuni Ward, Ganze, Kilifi County, a picture of lack paints itself in these dilapidated classrooms. This image of young pupils standing and sitting on concrete building blocks, with one pupil gazing, steeped in thought, as the mud-floored classroom flooded yesterday sparked anger and conversation about Kilifi County.
Ama tukipata madarasa manne ama matano standard classroom na madawati, nafikiri tutashukuru sana.
When our team visited the school, the floodwaters had subsided, but shame within the compound was bare.
Watoto wao wameambiwa wa 300 basi vio ni viwili. Walimu wanaenda kwa msitu. Because hawezi ingia kule kwa kuna watoto pale.
Darasa la kwanza hapa lina watoto 51 na wanakaa chini ya mawe, mvua ikinyesha maji yote yanaingia pale ndani. Tulikuwa na uhitaji mkubwa sana wa madarasa.
The head teacher, Gertrude Nyambu, tells us that of the 5 classrooms, 2 are structurally sound, 3 are not. Children learn under the shade of trees. 1 class is being shared by Class 6 and Class 7 pupils. But who exactly is responsible?
Hakuna kiongozi ambaye anaingia kwa mamlaka asijue kuhusu Mangororo, shida za Mangororo. Hata huyo former MP ahadi zangu sema kwamba tutaangalia, tutafanya. At the end wametoka.
Ganze Member of Parliament Honorable Teddy Mwambire, responding on social media, wrote, and I quote, "I am trying my level best to mitigate such misgivings in the constituency. Even the resources available can't meet an abrupt action. It should be put in proper records that Ganze constituency is still struggling to get its projects allocations for the 2018-2019 financial year from the NGCDF following some confusing realization from the previous regime. The NGCDF has been asking us to utilize some funds meant to complete some projects from their records which are not on the ground." A CDF report for the Ganze constituency for the financial year ended 30th June 2015 shows that Mangororo Primary School was allocated 2 million shillings, the same amount disbursed. But 5 years later, the school has almost nothing to show for it. The county government insists that the buck stops with the national government, as this is not an ECD centre. The CDF is only meant to supplement what the national government is doing. But as the back and forth continues, the school children in Ganze continue to suffer. Dorcas Wangira, Citizen TV.
All right, so that's the story of Mangororo Primary School. Of course, we saw some images of Member of Parliament for Malindi, Aisha Jumwa, visiting the school. We don't know what she donated there, but when you look at it, it's a situation that has been going on for quite some time. We understand that the school has 5 classrooms, 2 are structurally sound, but 3 are not. So we're asking the question, what is the solution to such kind of a situation? And who wants to begin? Antonio Lodge, you look at that school, learners having to go through the kind of infrastructure they have to go through, yet they're supposed to compete nationally. First of all, what does this mean for the learner, and what should we do at the level of the county government and the national government?
First of all, I think it's unfortunate in this era where free primary was supposed to be something that we dealt with a long time ago. Free primary education, especially issues to do with infrastructure. I think in between the functions of government, the county government would be arguing that among the things that they need to do in terms of their role as county, primary school and education, with the possible exception of ECDs, is not a function of county government. But looking at this situation, I think it's more a question of accountability issues to do with money allocated to projects and whether those projects were actually done. The current Member of Parliament, because I've interacted with him, is dealing with a situation in which the previous CDF board and the Member of Parliament appropriated or had projects, allocated money, which is not reflected on the ground. Subsequently, it appears as if the directives of government that you cannot continue to do new projects when you have old ones which you've not completed has had a situation where his monies are frozen. So the issue here is how and when did the audit CDF funds bypass and overlook a situation in which there was actually no implementation or a project actually that took off. 2 million was allocated. I don't know how much more money was put in there, but I think somebody needs to answer for this. Somebody really needs to answer for this. And in my view, the former funds manager, or if he's still the funds manager, ought to be answering questions. If not, ought to be arraigned in court. I think the former member of parliament, with their oversight role, really they're distinguishable, but the oversight role of the member of parliament also needs to be put into question. Did they or did they not know the situation in this school, and how did they overlook a situation in which public money was put for projects which were never actually there?
And Senator Kang'ata, obviously, yes, as he says, there are situations or issues that have to be investigated. But then again, you look at those learners, I mean, their lives are not waiting. Every other day they report to school, they want to learn, they want to access the best, but they cannot because of bureaucracy. What is the quick fix to this?
CDF has what we call emergency fund. To me, that is the best and the easiest thing for it to do, that they make an application to use that money to redress that problem, pending any other issues concerning audit, pending maybe government allocation through the ministry, but CDF is the easiest fund that can be able to remedy that. They have an emergency fund, which, by the way, within a week, one can be able to access and expend that money. And it's an issue of the Member of Parliament, together with the CDF manager, coming up with obtaining what we call a bill of quantities from the Ministry of Public Works, and then there is a resolution by the relevant committee of the CDF, and then that money is disbursed and work commences. So for me, that would be the best case scenario as of today.
Right.
There is also another probable route of the county government, but I agree with the governor, it is not his job. But I think there is a way. I have seen control of budget allowing counties to expend money for national government functions on the basis of a certain understanding that was there before between what we call transition authority and the counties, where there was somehow in some instances allowed to do national government functions. That can also be a second method of hastening, redressing the issue, where the county can intervene. It can also intervene under the cover of building more classes for ECD. I've seen such situation happening. But for me...
But that would raise issues, because if you're constructing classes for ECD on paper, but in actual sense they're for primary level, it might be a challenge.
You know what happens on practical sense, most primary schools usually share the same compound with an ECD. And again, also the administration of the ECD tends to be conjoined with that of a primary school. So when you build a class there, it becomes the issue of the headmaster to decide who is going to occupy that class and who is not. So for me, counties can do that. Also, even from a, let's say even you want to follow the law strictly, there are several instances where I have seen counties giving secondary school bursaries, giving college bursaries, doing several national government functions at the grassroots level. So that can be done. But barring that, the Member of Parliament should be answering these questions.
Before I come to you, Senator Ole Kina, let's speak to Governor, first Governor of Bomet, Isaac Ruto. And when the county government says that we cannot spend on this school because it's a national government function, there will be issues of audit, is it an excuse or is it a genuine reason that actually you cannot go ahead and fix the challenges that learners of Kilifi County are facing?
Me as a governor, I would go ahead and fix the school. And I just go and dare the Senate to proceed with what they think they want to do. Because I kept doing primary schools myself, and I kept answering those questions with the Senate. I believe that primary school should be devolved, and I've continued to say that, and that is even more evidence that we have to restructure the constitution. We need, there is no way national government will deal with every primary school. I want to tell you that you're just looking at just one single primary school. You go around and enumerate. There are thousands and thousands of primary schools in this country similar to that one or even worse. And there is no possibility of the national government ever attending to those schools. They are built by communities. And the position I took myself was that what the community is doing is what the county government should do. The county government is the community. The community is the county government.
Right.
That is what we meant to achieve through devolution. The only problem we've been having is that the National Assembly and the Senate have not moved ahead to devolve adequate resources. And the arguments we normally keep hearing do not add up. Let us devolve 35% to 45% of the resources, like they do in Nigeria, like they do in South Africa, like they do in all other devolved states. And let us allocate infrastructure development of primary schools and day schools to the county governments and allocate them appropriate resources. Let's deal with accountability in a much more focused manner, even at the local level. The community themselves are able also to provide oversight. It's not just the Senate. The communities can indeed do that. And that's what I believed in, and I went ahead myself to allocate. I kept answering questions.
But basically for infrastructure?
For infrastructure.
No teachers?
No. Teachers should be standardized by the national government. Training for teachers, curriculum development, examination, all those things belong to national government because we are one country. We can't have different exams. But building a classroom, really you can't bring it to Jogo House. I think that's just a joke. I'm happy that a number of MPs have tried to deal with that situation. But I want to tell you that the money they give to CDF is also not enough. I have been a member of parliament for quite a number of years. I've used CDF. I have seen the current member of parliament. I've seen the immediate past government member of parliament for Chipalungu. He just can't cope. The members of parliament just can't cope with the primary schools and the day schools and the demand for CDF.
Okay.
They are not able to do that using that little resource. I think there should be more resources allocated to the counties and be allowed to deal with that. And I think the governor should just come out of his cocoon and go and deal with that primary school. You have not misallocated funds when you are doing a national function. It is a public function. There is no one will take you to court over that issue. We'll just argue like we're arguing now. Is it your function? Isn't it your function? But I have done what belongs to the community. The problem is if you misappropriate the money for private use. But for a public function, there is absolutely nothing wrong.
Senator Lekina, would it raise an issue if Kilifi County Governor goes ahead and spends money to develop the infrastructure of that school?
The biggest issue that I would have with Kilifi County, and this is an issue that I have had with Kilifi County, is where the governor allocated 300 million shillings to build his own office. That to me, I agree 100% with Governor Isaac Ruto, that is misappropriation of funds. Because despite the fact that the constitution define I think in Schedule 4 the functions of national government and county government, I believe as a governor, and I know all governors in Kenya are doing this, they are taking care of their constituents by ensuring that those schools are built. So instead of spending 300 million shillings to go build your own office, you should have actually spent 5 million shillings to build 5 classes. So really, it is just an issue of misplaced priorities, and it is not only in Kilifi County. I can assure you that even in all our counties that is happening. We had an issue in Baringo County recently, where we even questioned. I even had sort of like a row with a member of parliament from that area, Tiati, where there was an issue with the school. So really, if a governor appears before my committee of CPIC and then he has appropriated funds or rather spend money towards building classrooms, I would actually support him for that. I also agree with...
So there's no flouting
I don't
of
think,
the law
I think,
in the Constitution?
I think in terms of, there's really none, because even the Constitution itself allows national government and county government to sort of like share functions in a way that if, let's say, the county government is best placed in doing a particular function, the Constitution is quite clear on that. The county government can go to the national government and say, we can take on these functions because you've not been able to be able to do it. So there's nothing criminal about it.
I disagree.
That you need to look at here.
Yes.
On page, the last page of The Nation, you will notice Governor Isaac has talked about infrastructure funding. 14 billion has just been released to secondary and primary schools, 10.8 billion to secondary, and I think 3.65 billion to primary school. This is the kind of funding that is given to schools in order to improve their infrastructure, correct? What kind of audit or what kind of considerations does the Ministry of Education give if they do not look at schools the kind that we see in Kilifi? I think that's one of the questions we need to be asked. 14 billion has just been released.
My experience with this method,
yes,
it shows the negative effect of what we call central planning. The people who are able to obtain this money, they tend to be the big schools. Those people who are well connected in Jogoo House. Let's say you come to Murang'a, you know, to name mentions. The huge schools with a very good connection with the ministries, but the poor schools, the so-called day schools, they rarely get such kind of support. So for me, this fund, from where I sit, is wrongly conceived. I wish this money, by the way, was channeled through CDF. In fact, I wonder, members of parliament are very powerful. They ought to have expunged this allocation from the ministry and passed it through CDF methods. But I disagree a little bit with my two colleagues on that issue. The Constitution provides that there has to be a concurrence when it comes to transfer of functions. So ideally, there ought to be some form of an agreement. Of course, it does not explain how that concurrence has to be crystallized, but it appears there has to be some concurrence if you want to evade an audit query.
All right.
Let me clarify that, because Article 189 of the Constitution is clear on that. In terms of the government at either level, how they can be able to share those functions.
Conversation in studio. Senator Olekino, you were saying that Article 189 sort of answers our questions?
Yes, you see, I don't think the framers of the Constitution made it completely impossible for a county government to take on certain functions which are for a national government. And that is why that Article 189 is there, for them to be able to cooperate and discuss and say, we can do this function better than you. And I think what Governor Isaac Ruto has stated is a way to do it, you know. And I believe, and this is why we have a stalemate. You alluded to an issue in the newspaper where the Senate and the National Assembly are still fighting on the issues of money. We in the Senate are saying, send more money to the counties, you know, so that certain functions can be done, you know. But then if 1.5 trillion shillings is left to the national government, then how do you expect county government to be able to carry out those functions? All
right, I'm trying to take a look at Article 189, Subarticle 1, subsection, Part C, says that the government at either level shall liaise with government at the other level for the purpose of exchanging information, coordinating policies and administration, and enhancing capacities. So sort of, if they can agree to work together, there are things that can be done. But I want to, you have been at the national government at some point. A minister was an assistant minister? Yes, so is the Minister of Education, the massive nature and the allocation that it gets in terms of the billions of shillings that it has to manage, is it the right, is it able to trickle down to the ground level to sort out matters to do with curriculum, sort out the matters to do with the employment of teachers and all the issues that are concerned with education, and still develop the infrastructure? Is it realistic?
No, I want to tell you that the competing demands that the ministry faces are just monumental. They are unable to be able to deal with them. For example, getting information about every primary school, they will see thousands of primary schools. And you see, they are looking at them in terms of statistics. I've just seen the minister here talking about statistics. Statistics don't talk. Public participation is the most important aspect of development, and that is the essence of the new constitution. If the money is closer, then the community will say, let's prioritize on that particular primary school. But if you are dealing with it in terms of figures in treasury or in the Ministry of Education, then you'll just be dealing with figures and saying, I'm sending 14 billion. I have done a lot of job. and you even don't know what the results will be of the 14 billion. I'm in agreement that members of parliament are even better placed to deal with this situation than the Ministry of Education themselves.
Right.
CDF has an aspect of public participation, and in fact CDF is proving to be one of the devolved functions that is becoming successful. County governments have a much bigger infrastructure and a system that needs to be developed to be able to deal with these issues,
right,
because they can be answered very quickly.
So would that require review of the law, or is
we
it
have
possible?
got to review the constitution, and in fact that is why I think you mentioned that we'll deal with that issue. That is one of the issues that we need to address. To what extent did we devolve the right functions to the counties? I remember some functions were devolved which actually did need to be devolved, and there are some functions that were not devolved that needed to be devolved. Infrastructure for primary schools should be devolved. Development of that infrastructure should actually be devolved,
right,
because there will be better management at that lower level.
Okay.
But things like immunization needed not be devolved, because immunizing children it should be a national function. It's not even a national function, international function. The World Health Organization is involved. So why are you telling Kilifi County to go ahead and deal with immunization for polio? It should be a national government function.
I think there's one more thing we need to consider.
But this particular one,
yes,
about primary school, is about the needs of each community, which is varying and can be addressed more at the sub-county level or at the county level.
Okay.
I think one last thing that you need to consider is at what level do various parts of government speak to each other. On the one hand, Jubilee government has told us that there was what you call last mile connectivity, meaning they must have done mapping and be able to know every primary school was connected. Somebody should have picked that there is a school like this. There is a question of the laptop project. They say they supply to all the schools. How was this school going to be able to keep or even use laptops? I think there are bigger questions that this government ought to be able to answer in the light of all these revelations.
Okay, all right. And I think we need to take a short break. On Daybreak, you can text us your views on 22422 or tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya at @samgitukwadzinzi_K. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. You can also call us on 071 9 777. I will be sure to sample some of your thoughts.